It's Wellness Time with the Wellness Professor Leo Simpson II, and I'm talking to you today about how self blocks success. Yes, how self blocks success. Now, I was headed to an event yesterday evening. It was about an hour away from where I live, and I decided to listen to my at a distance mentor, Myron Golden, and he talked about the importance of success over status, and really dealing with some nuances with regard to status versus success and all those different things. And as he really broke down the nuances, I began to think about the context of the wellness perspective that I share, especially related to understanding that we all have a void, we all have a value, and we are not able to satisfy and fill our own voids with our own voids with our own value, because our value is designed to satisfy and fill the voids of others, right? And I began to think about that and chew on it. He talked about success in the context of success being the focus of one's purpose and the yielding and submission and commitment to your purpose, especially even if you don't know what it is. Like, you can't even know it if you don't yield yourself to it before you know what it is, right? And he went on to say that two things. If you go out and achieve the highest achievements that you can imagine, but you do not fulfill your purpose, you have not been successful. As a matter of fact, you have status, but no success, right? Because our true success is in the context of the fulfillment of our purpose, right? And when I think about success, I think about a definition that I heard from Earl Nightingale. Earl Nightingale says it this way. He said, "This is the best definition I ever heard. And success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal." And in context of what Myron is saying, success is the progressive realization of the worthy ideal you are designed to realize, right? To pursue, to progressively realize. And so here's the success we are all designed to achieve. We are all designed to engage in the value exchange of human nature by releasing our value upon the voids of others to satisfy and fill them. That's success. That's a very definite and generalized way to look at, regardless of what your specific purpose is, our very unique, undifferentiating purpose at the same time is that we all, who have a void and a value, we all are designed to take our value and to unleash it, release it upon the voids of others to satisfy and fill those voids, because we are all designed to be a part of the value exchange of human nature. We all exist to create. We all exist to connect. We all exist to contribute. What? Value. To create value for someone other than ourselves, to connect that value to someone other than ourselves, and to contribute that value to someone other than ourselves. Absolutely. Now, with that said, how does self get in the way of success? How does self block success? I talked in one other live some time back about manipulation versus maximizing, right? And how if we do for others to do for self, then we are actually manipulating, because the truth is doing for others is doing for self. And here's the difference. When we prioritize and focus our value to satisfy and fill the voids of others, we're doing for others to do for self, because the first way we are doing for self is we are showing ourselves to be valuable at the highest level, because we're focusing on the fact that we were given value to give it, not to receive it and to hold it. You know, the old saying from Christ Jesus is that it's more blessed to give than to receive, right? It doesn't mean that it is not blessed to receive at all. It's just more blessed. It's a higher level of blessed, right? So when it comes down to it, the focus is we need to be unleashing our value. We need to be releasing our value. We need to continue to progressively expand the value we're able to release, because the more we release, the more we have the ability to release. This is one of those unique things that's very interesting and weird, that when you release value, immediately you have a void that's immediately replaced by more value that's expansive. I love that. I love it. In other words, the potential that we have lying dormant, the unfulfilled, unlimited potential that we have lying dormant, that potential, listen to me carefully, that potential is always looking to emerge as a result of the release of value. And so what happens is we can first and foremost block success. The self can block success, because if the self is, let me say it differently. If the self is being prioritized, then what happens is that the self makes others incapable of receiving the value that you need to release upon them, and you also minimize your ability to experience the expansiveness of your own value. Come on now. Here's why I say that. We live in an environment where, unfortunately, more people are doing for others to do for self. Here's what I mean. We are really not generous to help others. We are really not generous to do for others. We are really not generous to say, hey, even if I hurt, I'm going to make sure the next person is good. And I'm not just talking about in regards to the homeless people or the people outside. I'm talking about just in our personal environment. We have a high divorce rate today, and it's primarily because the two people in the context of marriage are primarily focused on self. And the only way marriage works is if the two people who are focused on self actually make themselves secondary. What do I mean? Make themselves secondary. When they understand that self will be taken care of by the other. Now watch this, Leo. You don't know my relationship. Myself is not being taken care of by the other person. That's not my point. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, the moment we begin to prioritize making sure our self is taken care of, in other words, the voids that we have are filled, we automatically remove ourselves from the place of greatest value. How do we do that? You can only prioritize one thing. And if you prioritize self, meaning prioritize voids of self being satisfied and filled, you cannot prioritize voids of others being fulfilled and satisfied by the value that yourself has. Yeah. So the truth is, and listen, I've been in the speaking, training, coaching industry. I've been in the service industry. I've been on the retail side. I've been in logistics, transportation. I've been in a number of different industries. I've been in the property management industry through nonprofit. service. I've seen a lot of different things. And let me tell you what I see of many of us. I see that we only do because of what we're trying to get as a whole. As a matter of fact, when you look at the national debt and you look at the aspects of the GDP and the issues we have with our production and the issues we have with our creativity and various other things, and the expansiveness of the value of our GDP, the value of our knowledge base. If you look at it, it is mediocre as compared to what it can be, because we are blocking our success because we're focusing too much on self. As a matter of fact, for example, when I share with people, hey, focus yourself on compassionate generosity in a very intentional and defined way, and then you can see yourself also being able to focus on commercial generosity in an intentional and defined way. And let me tell you what happens. One of the first things people start doing is, well, what if this person does this? And if I give them the money and they use the money that I gave them for this, you know what that's saying? That's saying that there's a thought process within oneself, that there's an importance of that money, and they're trying to really justify the importance of the money or whatever the form of generosity that's being called upon. And they literally are looking for a reason to hold that value that they have for themselves. Meaning they have a void in their mind that they perceive they have, that the value that they're holding is able to satisfy. And again, the value that each one of us possess is not for us. I was able to do a subject matter expert talk today with the community that I'm a part of, Entrepowerment. And in that talk, one of the main reasons I was doing that subject matter expert is because I was talking about the number of books that I've written, my book writing process, and various things with regard to that. And there was a question that came about how, I would approach the process of structuring my books, and, based on chapters and outlines and titles and some of those logistics that go into it. And I said, okay, so before we even get to that place, we have to make sure we are in the mindset of understanding that we all have a value, we all have a void, we all have a value. And as a result of that, I am making sure that I'm releasing value through the context of this work, this content that I'm putting out, which means I have to first and foremost really focus on the void that the people who would read this work actually have. And here's the thing. Sometimes we try to make sure we tailor things for people because people are more auditory, or people they read slower, a lot of different things, right? Don't focus on that. Focus solely on the void that needs to be filled and satisfied, and the value that you're going to release upon that is what you have to zone in on, right? And so when I write, and I shared this, when I write, the focus is on what's the void, what's the value. Not am I going to be an authority? That's about self. Not how many am I going to sell? That's about self. Not are they going to see me as somebody that's valuable? Are they going to want to refer me? Like all those different things. That's self. And that's going to block me from my success. And what's the success? To ensure that I am releasing my value upon the voids of others. Because that's the only progressive realization of a worthy ideal. That's the worthy ideal to progressively pursue. Is what? Filling and satisfying the voids of others with my value. And so self loves to be absorbed in and buy the things that self needs. Self loves to deal with what self is going to get. Self loves to deal with and appreciate and value what self is going to feel. Self is important. But I love this. So, man, I love the number one best-selling book of all time, the Bible. I love it. Okay. And so one of the things that the New Testament writer, the New Covenant writer, Paul, wrote over half of the New Testament, right? He says, do nothing. Watch this. Do nothing for selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility, count others more significant than yourselves. Look not only to your own interests, and this is the version of the English Standard Version. Look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Let me tell you why I love that. Because there's this picture I get in my mind. First of all, the picture that I get is, I get a picture of self and others, right? There's this picture of myself and then there's others, right? And that shows that we have to exist together, you know? And so he's saying, okay, look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others, right? But what does that really mean? What does that look like? So I love to take this picture. So this is others, okay? And this right here is self, okay? I love to ask the question, can you take others and put it inside of self? No, you can't. You can't take others and put it inside of self. However, can you take self and put it inside of others? Yes, you can. You can take self and put it inside of others, which means that if you are looking not only to your own interests, if you're not prioritizing and focusing your interests, but the interests of others, but you also have a focus on your interests, what it's saying is we need to have an interaction where that person's interest is focused on, but my interest is not eliminated, which means that my interest must be embedded in the context of their interest. And that's what it looks like to prioritize and focus on our value being released upon the voids of others. Because what it's saying is, I will go and prioritize the voids of others, starting with your private relationship, your marriage, your parenting. You in your private relationships, what you're saying is, hey, I'm here and I'm most valuable in this relationship because I get to take my value and release it upon every person's voids in this environment. And there's also the awareness that the voids of the people in this environment are so powerful that they amplify the value that I bring to this relationship. Okay, let's shift and bring it to the professional. Same thing. I'm on this team. What should people do on the team? The people on the team should identify the value that they bring to the team, but they need to understand how that corresponds to the voids of the people on the team so they can know how to inject, how to inspire, and to infuse their value into the voids of every person on that team. And when you do that, guess what? You're not going to block success. As a matter of fact, you're going to catapult success. You're going to actually cause yourself to be on a massive and strong launching pad of your success. Too much today, we are withholding value. We are withholding too much value. We are being so reserved in the release of value because we have, in many instances, experienced a lot of taking advantage of. People taking value from us, people manipulating us. And let me say this, we need to get healed from all of the manipulation we've experienced, from people taking value from us or manipulating our voids or manipulating our values and our voids. We got to get healed from that. We've got to get free from that. We got to be well from that. We've got to get outside of that confusion, that frustration, and that chaos. We got to replace that with wellness. And here's the wellness for you. Don't let yourself block your success. Don't let the focus on your voids hinder you, block you from releasing your value upon the voids of others. Be it in a compassionate, generous manner to those who can't do anything back for you. I'm talking about they can't even give you a compensation. Or if it's in the category of partial, commercial generosity, where a person is partially vulnerable and they can at least give you some type of exchange of compensation. You understand? You hear me now? Come on. You hear me now? Listen. We easily and very subconsciously, very subtly can be in a position to where the need that we have is actually influencing, leading in the release of our value and not even know it. We got to be very thoughtful and careful about that. And I'm saying this because I've experienced this. As a matter of fact, I talk about it in, I'm going to bring this up for you real quick. In my book, I Hate My Wife, right? It might be backwards if you're on Instagram live because, it inverts the picture. But if you're on one of the other platforms, it should be appropriate. And so when people hear that, they're like, you hate your wife? I say, I did. And that's a part of what this book is talking about. It's talking about the journey that I found myself walking and going in order to come to unintentional. I wasn't like really pursuing this, to the discovery that I actually hated my wife and didn't really know it. And here's what I want to share. I often ask this question to people. I say, is it possible for marriage to become better by hatred? And a lot of people, just like they look at the title, they look at me strange, like, huh? And some will say yes. Most will say no. And the reason they say no is because it's like, I don't see how that's possible. Like, marriage become better by hatred. And so then I asked this question. I give this scenario. I said, so let's say you're on a bridge and you walk to the edge of a bridge. There's somebody standing right there, and their job is to tell you, hey, I'm here to tell you that if you take one more step, you're going to actually plunge to your death. Now, when you hear that person make that statement, what are you going to do? Most people tell me one of two things, right? One of them is, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to not jump and take a step back. Some people say I'm running in the other direction. I said, okay, great. I said, here's the beautiful part about this scenario, this picture, is that it communicates that a distinction of what death is gives us a very definite distinction of what life is and what we can pursue as life. Like, literally, if I take another step, I'm going to plunge to my death. I know that going in this direction is destructive, and going in the opposite direction is clearly not destruction. It's the same way with hatred in marriage. When you know definitely and clearly what hatred is, you can have a very definite and clear picture of what love is, which means you can, with great intentionality, pursue love, because now you have such a delineated, clear, defining perspective of hatred. It's profound. Now, how does that regard self? In the context of marriage, I can unleash love upon my wife when I prioritize it, one, and two, when I prioritize it, understanding that I can give it to her without any reservation, because I understand when I give it, I'm absolutely filling a void that she has with my value. And my value is so clear and defined because I have a very delineated awareness about love. Right? Here's why I say that. Because in the context of our marriage now, I have a prioritization and focus of releasing my value upon her voids. And the more I release my value upon her voids, the more I grow in loving her. And the more I grow in loving her, the more our relationship gets stronger, and there's nothing that can actually separate us, not even our desires or thoughts about divorce. Here's the truth. There doesn't have to be any divorce if the people in the relationship would literally say, okay, what's the other person's voids? What value do I have to fill those voids? And literally just prioritize, focus, releasing that. And if the other person would reciprocate the same, guess what? You're going to have a relationship that's like a well-oiled machine. It's just firing on all cylinders. That's the same thing with teams. That's the same way with organizations. That's the same way with customer interactions. It's the same way with teaching and training and coaching. And it's the way to win. But here's what happens. Self blocks that success. The focus on what we need rather than the focus on what others need gets in the way. Yeah. I was that guy. See, I share this because I don't want you to think I'm just giving you some information. And that's just one area of my life. It's one that's very defined because it really shifted the trajectory of our marriage, right? It shifted it profoundly. But here's what I know. It didn't just shift my marriage profoundly. It helped me become more effective in every aspect of my work. It helped me to become more effective as an executive, helped me to become more effective as a speaker, helped me to become more effective as an author, helped me to become more effective as a professor, helped me to become more effective as a teammate, helped me to become more effective as a community member, as a singer, all those different things. It's like you understand, hey, this is what I do. As a matter of fact, one of the most beautiful pictures of effective awareness in that regard is this four-layered statement that I always use, that we use it with our children. Do what's expected when it's expected with the right attitude, tell the truth. I use it in my class. I use it in my professional aspects. Why? Because when you tell the truth of the expectation, you tell the truth of the clarity of the expectation, and therefore do it when you're supposed to do it with the right attitude. Guess what? You'll always be releasing your value upon the voids of the environment you're in, upon the people in that environment, and upon the situations in that environment. That's exciting. That's good. But here's the thing. Self blocks that success. And how does it do it? It's because there's this subtle tweak, this subtle shift in the way we think that I need this, so that's why I'm doing this. Last thing I'll share. When you are really pursuing your purpose, like Myron says, you're yielding to your purpose before you know what it is. You're going to find it out sooner than later. Just let me tell you that. And I was talking in the subject matter expert segment I was a part of today, how I know what that looks like to yield to my purpose before I know what it is, to the degree that that's how I've even come to a place of knowing that wellness is my niche, and me being the wellness professor, it's like very clear to me, right? And this morning I was thinking about my effort, transform kids' minds, and what it is that I do in that effort and why I do it. Watch this. Am I doing it because of what I can make? Yes. But is that the priority? No. I'll tell you why. Am I doing it because of what I can get and the status and the notoriety? Yes. But that's not completely why. Like, that's not the priority. That's not the focus. And let me tell you how I know it's not the focus. Because just this morning, like, I was brushing my teeth. And while I was brushing my teeth, I heard these sounds of kids' voices. But it wasn't sounds of kids' voices like they were playing and chattering. It was like I heard these sounds of kids' voices like it was like this cry and this call. Like they're almost wailing, and it's just like help almost is the sound of the voice. And it really touched me. Why? Because it made me connect with transform kids' minds and the work that goes into progressing it and facilitating it with even more intensity. It made me think about the people that I need to call, the people that I need to reach out to, the conversations that I need to have, the things that need to be done. And it's like, I got to do this, because if I don't do this, I'm going to continue to hear this cry. Not only am I going to continue to hear this cry, hearing this cry means that the void is not being satisfied. And that cry says, I have a value. What do you mean that cry? He that shuts his ear. This is what my multi-billionaire mentor King Solomon said. He said, he that shuts his ear to the cry of the poor, he also will cry, and his cry will not be heard. But the emphasis is on that first part of shutting your ears to the cry of the poor. What's the poor? Those who have a void. You have a value, they have a void. And that value that you have is designed to fill that void. And when you hear the cry, you can hear the cry because you have an ability to eliminate the cry, to satisfy the void. And at that point, when I heard the cry in my head, I asked myself, are you going to let yourself block success? Are you going to let any voids you have hinder you from satisfying the cry you heard? Or are you going to unleash yourself in the context of your value upon the voids of those whom you heard the cry for, and as a result, satisfy and fill their voids to the greatest extent you can? That's not a concern for any monetary exchange that is potentially likely, or anything else that I can get. Why? Because at that point, I am completely absorbed in the awareness of not being blocked in my success. That's how you got to look at that. Now listen, I want to invite you, if you want to help shut the cry of those kids, if you want to help those kids be encouraged away from bullying, encouraged away from suicide, encouraged away from crime, decisions in crime that lead to prison, go to either the link in the bio, or depending on what platform you're on, to link in the description, and discover how you can actually eliminate the void of a kid with your value. Okay? Do that. Right? That's a challenge to you. But the very last thing that I'll say is this. Do not let yourself become a block, not only to your success, but also the success of others. Because what happens is, when we don't release our value upon the voids of others, we're not just hurting them, we are. But really, what we're doing is hurting ourselves as well, because we're not releasing value that we're supposed to release. And literally, like, we're making ourselves sick on the inside because we're holding in things that are supposed to be let out. I mean, think about it. Who wants to be constipated? I know that's really not a good picture, but it's the appropriate one. Nobody wants to be constipated. Nobody wants to be backed up. Well, guess what? When you don't release your value with great liberality upon the voids of others, you might as well consider yourself constipated. Okay? All right. Well, don't be constipated. Don't let self block your success, nor the success of others. And as I often say, be well and be great. You hear me now?